There are moments in life when words aren't enough, moments when the noise around us prevents us from hearing what we truly need. Perhaps you're going through one of these phases now, facing doubts, trials, and challenges that seem insurmountable. Have you considered that perhaps what you need right now isn't more answers, but a bit of silence? In this video, we'll explore how silence can become a powerful tool to renew your strength and trust in God, especially in times of difficulty. Imagine finding peace, calm, and clarity even when everything around you seems chaotic. I'll show you how silence can strengthen your spiritual resilience, offering a new way to handle life's trials. If you've ever felt overwhelmed and directionless, this video might be exactly what you need. On life's journey, we all face obstacles that challenge our faith and our ability to persevere. These moments of trial can arise in many forms: an unexpected loss, a deep disappointment, or an uncertain situation that shakes our foundation. It's in these moments that anxiety and fear seem to intensify, and questions keep flooding our minds. Why is this happening to me? Will I be able to overcome this? These are questions that, in tough times, can easily disconnect us from our inner peace and even our faith. Perhaps you've experienced days when the weight of difficulties feels overwhelming, making each small step a daunting task. In these moments, it's natural to seek quick answers, to try to understand the reasons behind everything, and often to cling to what we can control. However, this search for control often brings more anguish and frustration, pulling us further away from what can truly sustain us in these times: full trust in God. This video is an invitation for you to rethink how you face these challenges. Throughout this content, we'll show that rather than fighting difficulties with more noise and anxiety, there is another way. Silence, often underestimated, can be the key to navigating these phases with a stronger heart. Instead of resisting, I propose that we explore together how silence can transform trials into opportunities for spiritual growth and inner peace. After all, it's in difficult times that we discover a strength we never knew we had. Spiritual silence goes beyond the absence of words or noise. It is a state of surrender and inner peace that allows us to access a deeper connection with God. But what does this silence truly mean? It's not just about distancing ourselves from external noise, but also calming our minds and hearts, allowing God's presence to fill the space often occupied by our worries and fears. Often we seek external answers, but spiritual silence invites us to turn our gaze inward. In this state, our minds stop racing to find solutions, to understand or control everything, and instead embrace the present moment as an opportunity to feel the divine presence. Spiritual silence is, in fact, a space where God can speak, where we can hear His guidance and feel His love more clearly. Entering this silence, however, isn't easy. Our society is full of noise, stimuli, and distractions, constantly vying for our attention. But by cultivating a daily moment to quiet our minds, we make room for God's peace to surround us, even amid turmoil. This silence is, in fact, a call to trust. It reminds us that instead of trying to carry every burden alone, we can place them in God's hands, who knows our challenges and guides us with wisdom. This spiritual silence transforms us within. It gives us the clarity to see beyond immediate difficulties and the courage to move forward, confident that we are not alone. It's through this sacred space that we understand silence is not emptiness, but rather filled with presence, hope, and peace. In times of trial, it's natural for our minds to fill with questions and worries. We want to understand the why behind each difficulty, find quick solutions, and seek immediate comfort. However, this intense reaction can often worsen our anxiety and weaken our faith. This is where silence takes on a transformative role. It allows us to slow down, breathe, and make space for the peace that comes from trusting in God. When we embrace silence amid trials, We allow God to take control. Silence is a form of submission to His will, accepting that even though we may not understand everything that happens, He has a greater purpose for every situation. This silence teaches us to let go of control and rest in the certainty that God is by our side, working on our behalf. The practice of silence in difficult times can be found in various spiritual traditions, which use moments of stillness to strengthen the mind and spirit. In many of these practices, silence is a path to achieving clarity that words cannot provide. It becomes a refuge where we can reflect without fear and face trials with a renewed perspective. It's not about running away from problems, but facing them with a calmer mind and a more confident heart. When we embrace silence during difficulties, we begin to notice that our anxieties and fears transform. That urgency to find immediate answers dissipates, making room for a serene trust in God. In silence, we understand that He guides us, even when everything seems uncertain. This silent strength not only helps us overcome trials, but also transforms us. It gives us the ability to look at challenges with more faith, knowing that in every difficulty, God is working to strengthen us. And it is this transformation that prepares us to live fully, regardless of the circumstances. Spiritual silence not only helps us face difficulties, it brings profound and lasting benefits to our life and faith. By practicing silence, we cultivate inner peace that stays with us even in the most complex situations. This peace is not just the absence of conflict. It is a sense of balance and stability, rooted in the trust that God is in control and that we don't have to fight alone. One of the first benefits silence offers us is clarity. When we calm the mind and step away from the relentless noise of worries, we can see more clearly. Instead of being overwhelmed by fear or anxiety, silence allows us to observe the situation with serenity, revealing aspects we hadn't noticed before. This clarity is essential for making wiser decisions and handling challenges with greater focus. In addition to clarity, spiritual silence helps us develop a resilience that doesn't easily falter. In moments of silence, we strengthen our faith as we take a step toward deeper trust in God. We learn to trust not only when everything is going well, but especially in times of difficulty. This spiritual strengthening creates a solid foundation that sustains us in the face of any adversity. Another positive aspect is the increase in empathy and self-control. When we become accustomed to silence, we become more attuned to our own emotions and reactions, as well as develop a more compassionate understanding of others. This self-control allows us to face trials without being overwhelmed by impulse or anger, but with serenity and patience. Finally, spiritual silence deepens our connection with God. When we stop to listen, we realize that God speaks to us in subtle and unexpected ways. He guides us through the small whispers in our hearts and the intuitions that arise when we least expect them. This closeness brings us comfort, reminding us that we are not alone on our journey. Silence thus becomes a bridge that strengthens our relationship with God, allowing us to experience His love and presence in a more intense and genuine way. These benefits transform the way we live. Spiritual silence equips us to handle life in a more balanced, confident, and compassionate way. Every moment of stillness becomes an opportunity to strengthen ourselves and find meaning, even in the most difficult situations. Incorporating spiritual silence into our daily routine may seem challenging, especially in a society that values constant movement and noise. However, small practices can help us cultivate moments of silence and build a solid foundation of peace and trust in God. These practices don't need to be complicated. On the contrary, spiritual silence is simple and accessible, and it is in its simplicity that it reveals its power. One of the most effective ways to begin is by setting aside a few minutes each day for a moment of stillness. Choose a quiet place where you can sit comfortably, free from distractions. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to relax. During these minutes, try to empty your mind, putting aside worries and troubling thoughts. Focus on the presence of God, imagining that you are surrendering all your fears and anxieties to Him. These daily moments of silence, no matter how brief, help strengthen our connection with God and remind us that He is present in every moment. Another powerful practice is silent prayer. Instead of asking or speaking, try simply being in the presence of God, in a silent, wordless dialogue. Silent prayer is an act of complete trust, where we allow God to fill our being and calm our hearts. It is a moment of surrender, and often it is during these periods of silence that we hear responses and guidance that we couldn't hear amid the noise of everyday life. Spiritual silence can also be practiced during common activities such as walking, working, or taking care of daily tasks. Transform these moments into opportunities to cultivate inner peace by keeping the mind calm and present. By doing so, you are creating space for God to manifest in your daily life, guiding your steps and strengthening your faith. Finally, remember that spiritual silence is an ongoing practice that deepens over time. Don't worry if, at first, you find it difficult to silence your mind. What's important is to persist, knowing that each moment of stillness is one more step toward a more balanced life centered in God. These simple practices are the beginning of a journey of transformation. Over time, spiritual silence will become a natural part of your life, allowing you to face challenges with serenity and confidence. Throughout the scriptures, we find numerous stories that demonstrate the power of silence in times of great challenges. These accounts not only illustrate the strength of silence, but also provide practical models for trusting in God during trials. Each story reveals an important lesson about patience, trust, and God's presence, even when silence seems to be our only response. An inspiring example is the story of Job. Known for his unwavering faith, Job faced a series of devastating trials. He lost everything he loved, his family, his health, and his possessions. In the midst of his pain, Job spent long periods in silence, reflecting and seeking to understand the purpose of his suffering. His friends attempted to offer advice and explanations, but Job realized that human answers were not enough to ease his pain. In the end, it was in his silence that he found a deeper connection with God, understanding that even without comprehending everything, he could trust in divine wisdom. Job's silence was an act of surrender, an acceptance that God knew what was best, and it strengthened his faith. Another story that illustrates the power of silence is that of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. On the eve of his crucifixion, Jesus went to the garden to pray and seek strength. Amid his anguish and suffering, he spent time in silence, in deep communion with the Father. His disciples did not understand the intensity of the moment, and many of them fell asleep. However, Jesus found strength in silence, surrendering completely to God's will, even knowing the suffering that awaited him. He did not try to escape or question, but in silence and humility, he accepted God's plan for his life. This moment is a powerful example of how silence can help us accept and face difficult situations, trusting that there is a greater purpose in everything. Furthermore, the experience of Elijah on Mount Horeb also teaches us about the value of silence. After facing a series of challenges and fleeing to save his life, Elijah sought refuge in a cave, hoping to hear God's voice. He witnessed strong winds, earthquakes, and fire, but God was not in any of those phenomena. It was only in the gentle whisper that Elijah heard God's voice, revealing that often it is in silence that he makes himself known. This story reminds us that in times of trial, God speaks to us in subtle ways, and it is in silence that we can hear him clearly. These stories are testimonies of the transformative power of silence in times of difficulty. They show us that silence is not absence, but presence. It is an opportunity to encounter God in a more intimate way and to discern his guidance during times of trial. When we follow these examples, we learn to face our own challenges with greater confidence and to seek, in silence, the strength that comes from faith. When we face moments of difficulty, trust in God can be the anchor that keeps us steady amidst the storms of life. Trusting in God does not mean that the trials will be easy or that we will find immediate answers to our questions. Instead, it means believing that regardless of the circumstances, God is in control and has a greater purpose for our lives. True trust in God requires us to relinquish the desire to understand and control every aspect of our situation. It's natural to want to know why we are facing certain challenges, but this need for answers can often generate more anxiety. When we place our trust in God, we accept that we may not always have all the answers, yet we can still walk in peace because we know he will never abandon us. When we choose to trust in God, we experience an internal transformation. Anxiety begins to give way to serenity, and fear yields to hope. This kind of trust is a daily practice, and it is often strengthened in moments of silence. It is in these moments that we remember that God is our refuge and strength, always present, especially in times of distress. A powerful example of this trust is found in the verse from Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. This verse teaches us to detach ourselves from human understanding and to surrender our ways to God, knowing that he will guide our steps perfectly, even when we cannot see the path ahead. Furthermore, trusting in God during trials allows us to develop a more mature faith. We begin to see difficulties not as punishments, but as opportunities to draw closer to him and strengthen our relationship with the divine. This trust provides us with resilience because, instead of despairing, we understand that every challenge is a chance for spiritual growth. When we choose to trust, we live with the assurance that everything happens for a reason and that in due time, God will reveal his plan for us. This trust strengthens us, enabling us to face hardships with a peace that surpasses human understanding. When we commit to practicing silence and trusting in God, we begin to notice clear signs of spiritual growth in our lives. These signs do not appear immediately, but gradually, like fruits of a faith journey. As we cultivate silence and surrender our worries to God, small internal transformations take place, and over time, they become evident in our attitudes and perceptions. One of the first signs of this growth is inner peace. Even in the midst of difficulties, you begin to feel a deep serenity that doesn't depend on the circumstances around you. This type of peace is one of the greatest gifts God gives us when we choose to trust him fully. It doesn't mean the absence of problems, but rather an emotional and spiritual stability that allows us to face them with calm and balance. Another important sign is the ability to listen more and speak less. Spiritual silence teaches us to value the power of observing and listening. Instead of seeking quick answers or reacting impulsively, you become more patient and receptive. This new behavior reflects growth in spiritual wisdom, because by listening more, we become more attuned to God's guidance and the needs of others. Humility also becomes a more prominent trait. When we trust in God, we understand that not everything is within our control and that our limitations are part of his divine plan. This recognition makes us more humble, and we begin to care less about our ego and more about the greater purpose God has for us. Furthermore, over time, our faith becomes unshakable. The doubts and fears that once unsettled us begin to lose their strength as we learn to trust in God's providence. This strengthening of faith is a clear sign of spiritual growth, allowing us to face even the greatest challenges with serene confidence in God. These signs of spiritual growth are not just personal benefits, but they also positively influence those around us. When we live in peace, confidence, and humility, we become examples of faith for others, often inspiring those who are also seeking a deeper relationship with God. As we conclude this reflection on the power of silence and trust in God, I want to extend a special invitation to embrace these principles in your daily life. Silence and trust are practices that transform the way we handle challenges, allowing us to face each day with more peace, resilience, and faith. These elements are not just answers for moments of trial. They become a way of life, a way of walking side by side with God, regardless of the circumstances. Starting today, seek moments of silence every day. Set aside time to disconnect from external noise and internal worries. Allow your heart and mind to quiet in God's presence so that you can hear His voice more clearly. This simple act of silence will bring spiritual renewal and create space for you to experience the peace that God desires to offer. As you practice this trust, even in small daily decisions, you will see gradual changes. Fears and uncertainties will begin to lose their grip, and you will feel more secure knowing that God is in control of all things. Remember, the path of trust and silence is a journey. Don't expect perfection, but celebrate each small step forward. May your life be a testimony to the power of silence and trust in God, showing everyone that even in the most difficult times, it is possible to find peace and purpose.